Welcome to tonight's Nahwu and Sarf online class of the Madrasatul Mumti'a li Ta'alim al-Islamiyya wal Arabiyya. And inshallah, we're starting our Sarf class. We're starting with Sarf today. And what we'll be treating in today's class is Nunu Ta'kid al-Khafifatu wa Thaqilatu, which means the noons of emphasis, the light and the heavy. So we have what we call Nunu Ta'kid, and we have two types of them, light one and the heavy one, and that is what we'll be treating tonight inshallah. So let's go straight into our book, the Tasrif Matn al-Izzi, and we're told وَيَحَقُ فِي الْفِعْلَ غَيْرَ الْمَاضِي. They said Nunu Ta'kid affects a fi'l that is not fi'l al-Madi wal hal, and it is not fi'l al-Mudari that is talking about the present. So you can remember that we have two types of fi'l al-Madi, fi'l al-Mudari, and one can mean hal, which is talking about the presence, or mustakbal, which is talking about a future tense. So fi'l mudari can mean hal, or it can mean future tense. But what we are being told here is that the moment you add nun ta'kid to a fi'l mudari, then it can never be talking about the presence. Then it means that it's talking about the future. So I told that we have about nunani li ta'kid al khafifatu sakina wa thaqilatun maftuha, that our our nun ta'kid is, when it is light, it is just a nun that has sukun, but when it is heavy, it is a nun with shadda and fatha. That is thaqilatun maftuha, it has fatha, so it is maftuh. So those are the two types of nun ta'kid. So how does nun ta'kid behave when we add it to a fi'lun mudari' al-hal? So how does it behave when we add it to a fi'lun mudari'? So we'll go straight into our tables and look at how it affects one by one. So we are told the first thing that we should know is that our nun ta'kid is what? Thaqilatun maftuha. It is heavy with a shadda and it also has fatha. Illa fi ma yakhtasu bi, except some specific situations. And what are those situations? Wa huwa fi'lu al-ithnayn mutlaqan wa jama'ati an-nisa fa iya maksuratun fihima abadan. When we have a fi'l al-ithnayn, a fi'l that is muthanna, when we are talking about two people, then in that case our nun ta'kid will be kasra. Or when we are talking about jama'atun nisa, when we are talking about a feminine plural, then it will be what? Maksura. So in those two cases our nun ta'kid is going to have kasra. Fatakulu idhabani lil ithnain wa idhabnani lin niswa. So let's look at that. So we are told our nun ta'kid al khafifa. So let's look into so we have this note here where we have drawn out the tables. So you can see that in all of this table, everywhere our nun ta'kid thaqila has fatha, except in two occasions, the muthanna. So you see that all of these muthanna are having kasra, and the jama'atun nisa, where we have nun niswa, in those two cases our nun ta'kid is also having kasra. So that is how nun ta'kid al-thaqila behaves when we are talking about muthanna and when we are talking about jam'u mu'annath. So in those two cases our nun ta'kid al-thaqila has kasra. What about nun ta'kid al-khafifa? We are told that nun ta'kid al-khafifa, it cannot work with muthanna and jama'atun nisa. So in these two cases we cannot have nun ta'kid al-khafifa. The author explains to us why. They said what? وَلَا تُدْخِلُهُمَا الْخَفِيفَ لِأَنَّهُ يَلْزَمُ الْإِلْتِقَاءُ سَاكِنَيْنِ عَلَى غَيْرِ حَدِّهِ. We are going, if we want to add nun ta'kid al-khafifa to a muthanna or to a jama'atun nisa, then we are going to end up having iltiqa'u sakinain in a situation where we cannot have iltiqa'u sakinain. فإن الالتقاء الساكنين إنما يجوز إذا كان الأول حرف مد. When that iltiqa'u sakinain is only allowed when we find that when the first sakin is what? The first sukun is an harfu mad, and the thani is what? Mudghama, is what? It has idgham. That is, it means that the second letter has shadda. So when we have a maddi and then it is followed by another letter having shadda, then we know that iltiqa'u sakinain is happening there, because harfu maddi is a sukun And when we have shadda, we know that it is a combination of two letters. The first one has sukun, the second one has haraka. So we have iltiqal sakinin happening there. However, iltiqal sakinin is allowed in that case. But that is the only time iltiqal sakinin is allowed. Any other place where we have two sukuns following each other, one must bow for the other. Either we remove one of the letters or we give haraka to one of the letters. So, but if we look at yaf'alan, so let's say just the same way we have our nun ta'kid al-thaqila here. Let's assume we remove this nun shadda. Then we add a nun that has sukun here. Then we'll be having an alif and then another nun that has sukun. And in that case, iltiqal sakinin is not allowed. So because of that, we cannot put nun ta'kid al-khafīfa on any letter that is musanna, or any field that is musanna, or any field that is jama'atun nisa, that is that has nun niswa. So we have treated those two cases. So now, what about all the other cases of all the other af'al? وتحذف من الفعل معهما النون التي في الأمثلة الخمسة وهي يفعلان وتفعلان ويفعلون وتفعلون وتفعلين. So we are told that our af'al al-khamsa, what are our af'al al-khamsa? They are af'al that in their natural state they usually end with a nun, which are yaf'alani, yaf'aluna, tef'alani, tef'aluna, and tef'alina. So in those 5 cases, we are going. The first thing we do before we add our nun ta'kid is that we remove that nun that naturally comes with yaf'aluna. So that is the first thing we do for all those 5. So now we first talk about these 3 cases, yaf'aluna, because we already talked about the musanna, the yaf'alani and tef'alani, right? So now we are going to talk about the other 3 cases. What is going to happen in these other 3 cases when we are trying to form our nun ta'kid al-thaqila? When we are trying to attach our nun ta'kid al-thaqila, the first thing is that we remove the nun, like we have earlier said. Then we now add what? We now also remove the waw. In yaf'aluna, we remove the waw that's supposed to be here. Tef'aluna, remove the waw that's supposed to be here. And tef'alina, we remove the ya that's supposed to be here. So then we now attach our nun ta'kid al-thaqila, our nun having shadda fatha. So it becomes yaf'alunna, or what? Tef'alunna, or what? Tef'alinna. So those are the 3 formations of our nun ta'kid al-thaqila when we are having the af'al al-khamsa. However, we have an exception. What is the exception? Whenever we have the letter before our waw al-jama'a is taking fatha, then in that case we are not going to remove the waw or the ya. So and that's why we have yakhshawna. When we add nun ta'kid al-thaqila to it, it becomes yakhshawunna, or takhshawunna, or takhshayinna. So we don't remove the letters when the letter before it has fatha. That when the letter before the waw al-jama'a or the ya al-mukhataba has fatha. But in every other case, we are going to erase it. So we have yaf'alunna, or tef'alunna, or tef'alinna. So that is how we form our nun ta'kid for all those ones. So وَتُحْذَفُ وَاوُ لِيَفْعَلُونَ. Okay, we've read that. وَيَفْعَلُونَ وَيَاءُ تَفْعَلِينَ إِلَّا إِذَا انْفَتَحَ مَا قَبْلَهُمَا. And we remove the waw in yaf'alun and tef'alun and the ya in tef'alin, except when we have a fatha before it. And we are giving examples. نَحْوُ لَا تَخْشَوُنَّ, or وَلَا تَخْشَيِنَّ. And we have examples from the Quran. وَلَا تُبْلَوُنَّ, or what? فَإِمَّا تَرَيِنَّ. So those are the cases whereby we don't remove the waw and the ya. But in every other cases we remove the waw and the ya, and we have tef'alunna, yaf'alunna, or tef'alinna for the af'al al-khamsa when we add nun ta'kid al-thaqila to it. Now, ويفتح مع النونين آخر الفعل إذا كان فعل الواحد. So we've talked about the muthanna, we've talked about the jama'at al-nisa, and we've also talked about the jama'at al-mudhakkar and mukhatab of mu'annath. So now, what do we have left? We have the ghaib al-mudhakkar, ghaib al-mu'annath, and mukhatab al-mudhakkar. So what happens in these cases? So we are told that ويفتح مع النونين آخر الفعل إذا كان فعل الواحد. The noon is going to have what? A fatha, like naturally. Wal-wahida al-ghaiba. And when the wahid is ghaib, that is when we have a feminine singular ghaib. That is the third person. And that is in what we are talking about here. We are talking about taf'alan. So we simply give the letter before the nun ta'kid a fatha, and we put a nun ta'kid الثقيلة there. ويضم إذا كان فعل جماعة الذكور. So like we said already, we already explained how this happens. So the letter before it will have what? To have a dhamma. ويكسر إذا كان فعل الواحد المخاطبة. We already explained how this happens. تفعلين. So the letter before the nun ta'kid has kasra. فتقول في أمر الغائب. So فتقول في أمر الغائب المؤكدا بنون الثقيلة. So we are now going straight into the amru. So we've basically treated the entire mudawari table. We've explained how the muthanna and the jamu muannas are formed. We also explained how the 5 af'al that have nun at the end of them, yaf'alani, taf'alani, yaf'aluna, taf'aluna, and taf'alina. We've explained how those happen, and then we said in every other case we simply put the letter before it to simply give them a fatha, and then we give our nun ta'kid al-thaqila a fatha. So what about our fi'lul amri? What about our fi'lul amri? So our fi'lul amri is very easy. It's basically really the same thing with our mudawari, except that now we have removed the harf al-mudawara. That's for if'alan, if'alani, and if'alun, if'alinna, if'alani, if'alunani. So and remember that if we want to do an amru for something that is ghaib, so if'alan, we are talking to a mukhatab, we are telling him do this with emphasis, definitely. But when we are talking about muzakkar, the ghaib is somebody that is not present. So you are saying liyaf'alan, that he should do it. So we see our harf al-mudawara, it still remains, and we simply add a lamul amri to it. So it's still going to be basically the same thing as our normal mudawara, liyaf'alan, liyaf'alani, liyaf'alun. So we simply just have lamul amri attached to it, litaf'alan, litaf'alani, liyaf'alnani, if'alan. Now we've removed the harf al-mudawara because we're talking about mukhatab. if'alani, if'alunna, if'alinna, if'alani, if'alnani. So that's basically how our fi'lul amri for nun ta'kid al-thaqila is formed. And the mutakallim li af'alanna, we just add lam al-amri again, and li naf'alanna. So let me do, or what let us do. So that is basically how we form our amru for thaqila. So how do we form our amru for khafifa? So khafifa is also very easy. So we look at our mudawari. We do the same thing we have in our thaqila. That's the same thing that we have in our khafifa. The only difference is that what our nun shadda is now simply a nun that has sukun, and also because we cannot form muthanna and jamu muannas from it. So that is the only difference with nun ta'kid al-khafifa. So we have yaf'alan, but we don't have anything for muthanna, and we have yaf'alun. So for ghaib muannas, we're talking about a female that is not present, we say taf'alan, but for muthanna and jamu, we cannot put nun ta'kid khafifa. So taf'alan, taf'alun, taf'alin. So and if af'alan and naf'alan. So that is how we form our nun ta'kid al-khafifa for mudawari. However, the ones that are not available are muthanna and jamu muannas. That is the muthanna, that is the dual, or jamu muannas, the feminine plural. So the same thing happens with our amru of nun ta'kid al-khafifa. We simply add our lamul amri. In these cases, we add our lamul amri when we are talking about ghaib. When we are talking about mukhatab, we simply remove our harf al-mudawara, and we still have the same thing down. And then when we have our mutakallim, we have li af'alan or li naf'alan, we add lamul amri again. So that's basically the treatment of nun ta'kid al-khafifa wa thaqila. So let's just go through the remaining of the notes. The textbook. وتقول في أمر الحاضر مؤكدا بنون الثقيلة. So we are talking about the amru of somebody who is present with nun ta'kid al-thaqila. Like I said, we remove our harf al-mudawara and replace it with hamzatul wasli. So we have unsuronna, unsurani, unsurunna, or unsurinna, unsurani, unsurnani. Wabil khafifa, unsurun, unsurun. Now we don't have muthanna for this one, and what one we have unsurin. This is when we are talking about the mukhatab of feminine. So remember, we don't have muthanna and jamun for the feminine. We have al khafifa. Waqis ala hadhi nadhahiru. So when we are talking about other things, we use these formats that we have learned to add a nun ta'kid al khafifa or thaqila to a fi'il. So let's go through it again. A brief summary is that nun ta'kid al thaqila is a nun with shadda and fatha and is maftuha, except in two cases, when we are talking about muthanna and when we are talking about jamu muannas. And what happens in those cases? Nun ta'kid al thaqila, we now have kasra. However, when we are talking about the af'alul khamsa, and we've already talked about two of the af'alul khamsa already by talking about the muthanna here. What happens when we are talking about the af'alul khamsa? We remove the nun that naturally comes and we replace it with a nun ta'kid al thaqila. And for these three cases that are not muthanna, yaf'alunna, taf'aluna, and taf'alina, we remove the waw or the ya. So we have yaf'alunna, taf'alunna, or taf'alina. So the only exception to that rule where we don't remove the waw or the ya is that the letter before the waw or the ya actually has a fatha. So in that case we have yakhshawunna, takhshawunna, or takhshayinna, for example. And finally, in every other case, we simply give the letter before it a fatha. We give the letter before it a fatha, and we put our nun ta'kid thaqila to it. So if we want to do nun ta'kid khafifa, it's basically the same process, just that instead of having our nun shadda, we have a nun that has sukun, and we cannot form nun ta'kid. You cannot use nun ta'kid khafifa for something like muthanna or jamu muannas. And finally, if we want to do the amru, all we just have to do is add a lam ul amri if we are talking about ghaib or mutakallim, or remove the harf al mudara'a if we have mukhatab mudhakkar. So that brings us to the end of today's lesson, inshallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us beneficial understanding. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.